Coming up on the Thursday, April 14th edition of Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we'll talk a little bit about what makes Ole Miss kind of special. We might delve into recruiting, and we'll tell you what's going on with the Locked On Ole Miss podcast and this stuff we have coming on down the pipe. It's really, really exciting stuff going along with this renovation. This is going to be looks a little bit different, and it's going to look a little bit different until we do the new Locked On Ole Miss podcast. But this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, here in front of a glorious cinder block wall while renovations go on in the palatial Central Florida studio. Thank you for joining us today. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered with this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Of course, hit the bell for notifications when new videos go up. And last but not least, upvote the video itself. It will be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. Yesterday was our first show back. We're doing renovations in the palatial Central Florida studio, and we're very thankful to everybody for being patient with us. But for the time being, we're getting that done and starting to go down that road. And there's a reason for it. We had some flooding in our house, and they're going to come through and get it because it was their fault, and they admitted fault and all of that stuff. They're going to fix everything. But part of that is like, hey, let me take this opportunity to renovate the studio to make it look better. So I think it will look better. I got a new chair and doing the whole 9 yards for this podcast on the palatial Central Florida studios. One of the things we have to do, we have somebody that's going to be coming on board in August, and he's going to come on and talk once a week just like that and give his perspective of what's going on. But he's going to be located in Oxford, and he's going to kind of keep his ear to the grindstone a little bit. What's going on about what's happening, and he can kind of be an insider perspective that nobody else can do. But yeah, it'll be pretty interesting. His voice is a little bit different. Everything looks good. We'll introduce him in August when he comes on board. Also, Tom Vanderford, Kara McCutcheon, they normally come here. Kara injured herself yesterday. She will not be on the podcast today. So sorry about that, but I hope she gets well quite soon. She brings a perspective that is not really on any other show. She's completely unique. So I hope she gets better soon. Also, we have Derek Vandegrift that came on the show yesterday and talked about what's wrong with Ole Miss baseball. He's our baseball guy. He talks all about baseball and does a really good job with that. And I'm glad he is on board with the show. So we're going to keep expanding that. Once we get through, we have Bill Flowers that comes on the show quite frequently. And we are, if we hit 1,000 before football season, we're going to do a live postgame show. It's going to be a postgame live instead of a postgame pod. So we have a lot of stuff cooking here at Locked On Ole Miss, and it's all because of you. We're trying to do this in a really cool way, in a really different way. And the way that we can do it is by not basically overly charging you money or anything like that. We do this purely out of what would be interesting, what's good for the program, for lack of a better word. And this is the niche we're trying to fill, not the niches that are over there with the pay sites and everything goes on where basically the stories are based on fear with your money at stake. So we don't do that. But I'm really, really excited about what's coming down on the line for Locked On Ole Miss. We're up somewhere near 700 subscribers on YouTube. It's going to hit 1,000 by football season. It might hit 1,000 by summer, to be perfectly honest. But we're going to talk all about that and keep going and continue to add perspectives. We also have John Garcia, who has joined the Locked On Network. You'll see him either next week or the week after on this show. essentially just being a recruiting expert, doing what he normally does. So we're going to be able to get recruiting coverage on a next level type source here at the Locked On Network. I love what they're doing. The vision of the Locked On Network is just fantastic. And basically what they're growing this, like everybody, what's a good way to put this? Everybody tried to copy the original Rivals and Scout and Border Wars format from 20 years ago of fan sites. Everybody that comes out tries to copy those guys. The Locked On Network is doing what they're doing, but they're doing a modern version of it. There's no print. There's no message boards, things like that. It's all of the stuff that's on the outside that's really good. They're going to play that, and they're not going to waste your time with the other stuff. And I think that's a good way to put that. All the stuff that just like are just time drains. Locked On doesn't do that, but they give you the information doing different things. So them getting into the recruiting game, they're already getting into the team show game, and they're hiring podcasters like crazy. We still need a Mississippi State podcast, by the way, on the Locked On Network. It will be a lot easier if, for the Ole Miss side, if there was a Mississippi State side, especially in this state. So if you know anybody that is interested in the Locked On podcast from the Mississippi State angle, put it down in the content below. We'll have you get in touch with the correct people and see what's up with that. But yeah, I'm all about that. Also, this shirt, by the way, that looks like it was bought in 2002. It's 9 months old. 9-month-old shirt, and it looks like this. And I like the shirt. I mean, it's comfortable, but it's kind of aggravating. But we're going to talk in the second segment about surprise, surprise, the quarterback competition, and how the next week and a half needs to look for both people, both participants, Jaxson Dart and Luke Altmyer, to make it into the summer and the fall, because the start of fall is the key. You are basically well past the 3-quarter mark of spring practice. If you can close it out at the status quo where it is now, what does that mean? If Jaxson Dart can have a great week of practice, what does that mean? If Luke Altmyer starts extending a little bit, what does that mean? And that's what we do, and we're going to tell you why. We're going to tell you why Lane Kiffin absolutely abhors turnovers, and those are a little bit of a problem right now. It's just a whole bunch of stuff with that, and just pay attention to that. Now, before we get started with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about athletic greens. So, our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because, I wanted more energy. I wanted better gut health. So, I've been on athletic greens for a few weeks now, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It has a kind of mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each morning. Being in Florida, that's, it's kind of a normal thing. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the things. So, right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplement to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/college. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/college. to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. That's Athletic Greens. All right, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. But now for a big announcement. Starting Thursday, April 28th, tune into Locked On NFL Draft's live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft, with all 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. And for those of you dying to know who your team will take, catch Audacity and Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, hosted by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of Peacock and Williamson's NFL show all week leading up to the first pick. Where? Go to the Locked On NFL Draft. That'll be on the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube page, and the Audacity NFL Mock Draft, Audacity, and Locked On NFL Draft podcast feeds. When? Locked On NFL Draft Live, April 28th at 7 Eastern, April 29th at 6:30 Eastern, April 30th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and Audacity's NFL Mock Draft, April 18th through 22nd and the 25th. So that's going to be a pretty cool thing. Now, there's only one story that really matters and that anybody cares about when it comes to football, and specifically Ole Miss football, and that is the quarterback competition. We're going to talk about it nearly every day. We're going to try and hit it from all different angles. And by the time they kick off against Troy, you're going to be going, my goodness, Steve is talking about the quarterback again. Well, let's fast forward through that. I mean, that's just the way it's going to happen. But that is the only story that anybody cares about. Just remember, all these people that are going crazy about Ole Miss baseball, which they should, this isn't a right or wrong type thing. All the people that went crazy about Ole Miss basketball, again, not a right or wrong thing. Just realize that they combine reach about 1/4 of the total fan base. This is a football fan base. 75% of people just care about football information. So we're going to talk about football every day. And the reason I say this is whenever I do a podcast on something other than football, my numbers are minuscule. When I do football, it has a chance to grow. There's videos I have recently that were football-centric that have gotten 1,500 views. There's also videos that I've done about men's basketball or women's basketball or baseball that have gotten anywhere between 300 and 400 on the high end of what they're doing. So understand that this is a 75% football fan base. So we're going to talk about things over and over and over again. And one of the things we're going to talk about is this quarterback competition for the next 4 months. You know, it's the middle of April. They're wrapping up spring practice. Right now, Luke Altmyer probably has the lead and maybe has extended the lead in the quarterback competition thus far in spring practice. He's done it by being essentially hyper efficient, not turning over the ball, using the backs, which obviously with this back, that's a pretty smart move. Michael Trigg at tight end. It's been a lot of short passes, very efficient. We've told you over and over what Luke Altmyer needed to do to beat Drew Brees is to be hyper efficient, almost machine-like. Be a Drew Brees to Jaxson Dart's Brett Favre. That was the path forward. That's what needed to be done. And to this point, that is what's happening. Now, do not overly take the interceptions that Jaxson Dart has thrown in spring practice as some sort of a final thing regarding him in the quarterback competition. This is early. He's still adjusting. New system. New voices in his ear. Now, I realize that our USC analysts came on board, so he's probably used to hearing them, but those aren't the shot callers. Those aren't Lane Kiffin. Those aren't Charlie Weiss Jr. Understand that. So there is an acclimation period that he had to go through once spring practice started. So you don't really judge him at all the first 2 weeks of spring practice. It just is what it is. There's only so many things to rep. There's acclimation, there's install, there's new players everywhere. Of course he was going to struggle. Jaxson Dart, through experience only, was going to be up by just as much after the first 2 weeks. But after the first 2 weeks, acclimation should start to take hold. And flashes should start to pop. And from what I understand, they have started to pop, honestly. A lot of the work for reps happens on Tuesday and Thursday, by the way, with Lane Kiffin. You don't see hardly anything on a Saturday scrimmage. Saturday scrimmage is just so you can have recruits there to see how you practice. That's all. The hardcore stuff happens in spring practice on Tuesday and Thursday with no eyes on it. Understand that. So what you see on Saturday and what you saw with Jaxson Dart having an absolute horrible day, Luke Altmyer being a 50% passer and kind of efficient, that looks really good, but there's a lot of stuff that was planned, I think, that led to those results. One of which was to take tight ends out of the offense, and this is a tight end lenient offense. Also, you were unable to block the edge. How do you work under pressure? So the reps mattered because they probably wanted to see something to where, what if the Baylor game happened again? You were playing against a team and the offensive line just didn't have a day. Which quarterback can handle that better? That type of stuff is what they were probably doing. And because of that, you can honestly see that, and it's important, but Tuesday and Thursday are the more important days. Now, once we get to the Grove Bowl, now it's going to be just as vanilla as this. They're going to do things like last year when receivers sat out. Remember, they want to put as little on camera as possible, especially now they have 2 new coordinators. They don't want to see it. And we're going to talk the next segment about the defense and how excited you should probably be for this defense. And we'll wait until that. But right now we're talking about the quarterbacks and going up against that defense, which is a top 2 or 3 defense in the SEC. I know that is crazy to think of. That is absolutely insane to think of. But that's a top 2 or 3 defense in the SEC coming back. There's good players everywhere. There's depth on that defensive line. There's work they have to do at linebackers. Lane Kiffin the other day actually said we only play with 2 linebackers. So 3-2-6 confirmed again. But there are a bunch of people that are going to claim different stuff about that. But again, I enjoy being right. I like being right. And I will tell everybody when I'm right because I take credit for it, for being right. Especially whenever you come out and look at change. Remember, on stuff like this, if somebody says something over and over again, it's probably going to happen just because of the laws of averages. That's not the important thing. But changing a 3-2-6 whenever they go get a Nyseem Young who played in the 3-2-6 with defensive linemen like J.J. Pegues playing in nose guard, being a backup at nose guard, denoting an odd front. There's a difference between you really wanting them to play defense a certain way and taking context clues to mean that happens to the actual thing happening. There's no eyes on it. Nobody really knows what's happening. The only thing you have are the brief clues that Lane Kiffin gives. And there's so many people that try to put codes on Lane Kiffin. What he said and what he meant and all of this stuff. And that's stupid, I think. Lane Kiffin is unbelievably honest. If he doesn't want to talk about something, he's not going to talk about it. If he does, he's going to be directly honest with you. He's not going to play games. And that is what we have seen over the last 3 years. He doesn't play games. He's just him. And what he says so far is Luke Altmyer is unbelievably efficient and takes care of the ball, and Jaxson Dart turns it over too much downfield. And turnovers, if you take Robeson at FAU in 2019, he talked over and over again. He was like, with Lane Kiffin, do not turn the ball over. That's the thing he cares most about. Do exactly what he says, no more, no less, and you'll be fine. Which anybody that went to boot camp knows that philosophy. When you're told to do something, do exactly that, no more, no less. And it's kind of a military thing. So that is interesting as well. So we're going to hear from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league news, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online where the game starts. Also, look in the future whenever they give over-unders. We're going to do over-unders as well and talk about what's going on at Bet Online. They have a lot of stuff going on, so it should be a lot of fun. All right. Yeah, we got an ad locator coming up. Basically, going to give you another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the defense. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Do us a favor and rate us and review us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. It doesn't matter what you say on the review. Just give us a 5-star review. That'll help people trying to find the podcast and do some good things on that side of the medium. Now, a lot of this show is on YouTube. This is more of a visual show, but we do have a podcast as well that we simulcast it. So we'd like people that are interested in podcasts to find it there. So check that out as well. Now, in the first segment, we talked about a little bit what's going on right now at the Palatial Central Florida studios and all of that. And in the second segment, we talked about the quarterback competition and where that could stand moving forward. Now, like I said, it looks like it's going to be a status quo after spring, which means Luke Altmyer and Jaxson Dart are going to the fall with an absolute press conference or quarterback competition that could be an absolute one for the ages, one that we have not seen at Ole Miss in a very long time, probably since Russ Shows and Tom Luke back in the day. That's the last time we had two evenly matched quarterbacks that kind of went back and forth. So that could be interesting. Tom Luke is in the building. He would have insight on that as well. But, yeah, that's what I look at. Now, when Tuberville was here, he had Josh Nelson, Paul Head, Stuart Patridge came in 97. Romero took over in 98. But it wasn't ever really a super quarterback competition. It was like Josh Nelson quarterback until the very end of the year, and then Paul Head takes over the last two games and gets a jump start on the next season. This is what they did in probation. Paul Head quarterbacked all through 1996. Stuart Patridge took over the last few games of that season. And then he went bell to bell in 97 after they were good to go. 98, Romero took over before he got injured against Georgia. And then David Morris of QB Country took over for one game against Mississippi State. I'm sure he tells everybody about that game. But it's one of those things that you were kind of fortunate. I think State went to the SEC championship game that year, and a lot of that is because Romero Miller got hurt before that game. And also, I think that Tommy Tuberville kind of freaked out because he was going to Auburn. That was already done, so there wasn't so much work. So it was an unbelievably simple game plan with the excuse that you had a freshman quarterback coming in there, freshman walk-on quarterback coming in there, and the game plan was simple and made it easy for the Mississippi State team, was able to come out of Oxford with the win. All the while, boxes and the offices at Ole Miss were being packed up, including all the recruiting information to go down to Auburn. It was not probably Tommy Tuberville's shining moment, but it is what it is. It's something that most people are not going to really be able to get past. Anyway, enough down memory lane a little bit. We're talking about the defense, and I think this defense has a chance to be a top 3 defense in the Southeastern Conference, and a part of that is how good the secondary is. Now remember, in a 3-2-6, 6 players, that's over half of your defense is on the back end, and there's different players that do different things. LeDarrius Tennison, by the way, during spring is having a fantastic spring. He's kind of playing the Jake Springer role of being the box safety that does a lot of the physicality and run stopping. And he's doing a really good job at that. You got Tysheem Johnson. They're moving all over. So you're not going to be able to basically point at a player and say, okay, there's the free safety. No, because you have 4 safeties and they all kind of go around. Except for Tennison. He's going to be around the box. But the other 3 guys are going to move around and do different things. You've seen things. Tysheem Johnson playing back in the back. You've seen him up in the box. all of that stuff happens in this defense. This is kind of the next evolution of this defense. Even over what Iowa State does, which is kind of, they kind of created it. And this is kind of the evolution of that defense. And it's kind of interesting to see the versatility back in the back. Now, at linebacker, we have some questions. Troy Brown hasn't played very much. Ashanti Seastrunk is, we talked about him yesterday, is having a really good spring and is actually making plays. He's going to see the field in the fall a lot, whether he's starting or not. And Kari Coleman is showing out over on the other side. Only 2 linebackers line up on the field. So it's going to be important to find the right ones. Now, defensive line, they've just got depth. Now, granted, there's only 3 players that play at a time on the defensive line. So if you've got 9, you've got a 3 deep. And right now they've got a 3 deep at nose guard, which is the only true defensive lineman. And then you have the ends, which they can be 250, 260, 270 guys, and they pinch down against the run. They rush the passer out wide, depending on the situation. There's a lot of versatility there. Now, there's going to be a situation where teams can play murder ball against them, like Alabama did last year. And the reason that I'm not overly concerned about that, there's not many teams that can do that. And Alabama next year does not have a Brian Robinson. So they can't even do that next year. Now, Georgia could probably do it. I would imagine if LSU got serious about it, they could probably do it. I don't know. They after 2019 at LSU, they started recruiting a different type player. And they might not be able to play murder ball, which so much of their history under Les Miles and then the beginning Ed Orgeron was on that running the football that you would think of. And they've kind of lost that from the repertoire. It is absolutely a bizarre thing. And so you might not. A&M would probably try. They would probably try to do it. I don't know if they can do it. The point is, football has changed so much. And you always hear me say, fans are stuck in 2008 as a football fan. They look at football and college sports like it's 2008. And so much has changed in the last 14 years. Probably more than any 14-year period before. And because of that, your relationship between players and the fan base has changed. The relationship between players and the university has changed. The relationship between coaches and the fan base has changed. Everything's about movement. Everything's about turnover. And the days of Johnny Vaught being just associated with Ole Miss, this is Ole Miss, doesn't really exist anymore. You got so much turnover that assistant coaches don't have time to make tons of relationships at places to where they get brought back and they become like the company man. That just doesn't exist anymore. Players that there's no such thing as the 5th-year senior on the field starting. After the 2nd year of not playing, he's probably going to move on. So it's all going to change. It's the age of the mercenary, I call it. The age of the mercenary. And because of that, everything's going to change. Because of NIL, everything has changed as far as relationships with universities and recruiting. As far as the transfer portal, recruiting itself has changed. Now it's important in high school recruiting to finish in the top 2. Because whenever the people that he signed with pisses him off, he's going to hop in the portal and he knows he has the experience right there with you at number 2. And you just look at the way that we've turned over talent on our roster. Like I said, this is the most talented Ole Miss football team in my lifetime. I will not shy back from that. I will not say anything. But it's one thing to be talented and it's quite another to be good. So these reps matter. Spring practice is important for the first time in probably those 15 years because of the transfer portal. That's what people don't understand. Because of the transfer portal, spring practice is now important. Those reps matter. For the first time since back whenever they made practice into this fictional thing that was so great. It actually matters now. I mean, something else. So, defensively, I kind of went off the rails. We're running out of time, so I need to get out of here, and I'll probably talk about it again tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tom Vanderford, by the way. The relationships, everything has changed in college sports. Everything. Even to the how you consume college sports. Between 2008 and now. Everything changed. It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listening every day. Tomorrow, Tom Vanderford will give his perspective on the show. Should be really good. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Anyway, until tomorrow, I hope to see you then. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to talk a little bit about Ole Miss sports. So we're renovating. It's going to get a little bit better. Bear with us. Pardon our progress. But until then, peace.